The government is considering relaxing nursery ratios in England to see staff look after more toddlers at once. Now, in theory, this is to reduce the cost of childcare, with the current cost of a full-time nursery place for a child under 2 being around £14,000 a year. So the government is trying to follow the Scottish model of childcare, where one adult can care for 5 toddlers. At the moment in England, one nursery worker can only look after 4. I say only, it sounds like quite a job to me. Most nurseries don't want the change. They say it's unworkable and realistically wouldn't reduce costs for parents. The National Day Nurseries Association says Scottish nurseries receive, on average, more funding per child and are exempt from business rates, so it's not a fair comparison. The issue was recently debated in Parliament after a petition started by parents worried about child safety got more than 100,000 signatures. So, what do you think? Should the childcare ratios be changed? Maybe you work in a nursery. You can tell us whether you'd be able to save money if they were. Could you cope if they were? If you're in the sector in Scotland, how does it work there if you're looking after 5? Maybe you're a parent who's struggling to manage the cost of private childcare and you think if this brings down the bills, bring it on. 88291, email vine@bbc.co.uk with your phone number, and you can also ring us on the long number or WhatsApp us 08000 288 291. You should only have to input it into your smartphone once. OK, Sue Quincy runs Bramley Hedge Forest School, which is a day nursery based in North Allerton. Hi, Sue.
Hi there.
Well, how would this affect you then if you could do 5 to 1 instead of 4 to 1?
Not a chance. It will not happen here, even if they turn around and say that it will happen. It won't. It's more stress on my staff, and it's not fair on the individual children. So it won't happen. As we know, early years is the most important and crucial point in children's education. This has actually even been stated by Rushy and Boris on numerous occasions, and yet sadly the disrespecting funding rate is still not recognised by government. Now with the national wage going up...
What was the word you used? Disrespecting?
Disrespectful. It is an utter, disgusting and disrespectful funding rate that we receive from the government, that Rushy and Boris are fully aware of what we receive per child for the funding. And then to go and add on more children into the ratio, what are they thinking? What are they actually thinking?
I suppose... I don't know whether you charge your parents or whether the cost comes entirely from the council or the government. You tell me.
Right, OK. So, which is another unfair point to parents, because the government are advertising it as free funding, which makes nurseries and childminders look bad, because all we're asking for is a respectful amount. So to cover the cost, because the government do not pay enough funding, we have to basically ask for a consumable fee, which we don't want to do this. But you tell me how on earth we can survive on when the national funding, the national wage has gone up a lot, and the funding has actually only gone up 53% in the last 14 years.
I understand. I was only just trying to work out the breakdown. But I suppose the point, if the government were here, what they might say is this will enable you to run your nursery with less money and you'll make more profit.
So what are they going to say to my staff for the well-being? The staff are already on a pathetic pay. You know, luckily for parents and things, they're not going on strike. Yet why should our staff be underpaid when in the nursery world and the childcare sector, when all the other sectors are going on strike, and yet they're already receiving more than the national minimum wage?
Give us what's the average age of a child in your nursery then, Sue?
The youngest age that I have at this moment in time is 6 months old.
Oh, wow, so young. And then do you go above 3, the age of 3? Probably do.
Yes, we do. Yeah,
okay.
we do. We do have children from up to the age of 4 ready to start school, but then we also collect children before and after school as well.
So if it went to 5, and forgive me for sort of pressing this because I can see you think it's just a non-starter, you would have a nursery, a staff member looking after 5 children, but they might be various ages, might they?
Not necessarily, no, because it depends on what room that they will be in.
I see. Okay.
It depending on the age of the children, depends on how many staff you have in with the ratio. I mean, I put this to a parent this morning and I asked Paul, who is one of our parents, and I said, would you be happy? And he said, no, not at all. He said, I already know that my child craves the attention for the age of what he is. So you adding another child in the mix, that's not fair on the staff. And also, all children children, you're presuming that all these children that are coming in are quiet little things that you can put in a corner, sit there and play.
I'm a parent.
And it is not like that whatsoever. You know, at the end of the day, we have to do tracking, which is basically for children to see their process on how children are developing. So you're already putting strain on by all the paperwork that we already have to do. You know, it's going to be disastrous, and it's detrimental both to the children and the staff. It's just not on.
Thank you very much.
Whatsoever.
Thank you, Sue. Lovely to talk to you. Sue Quincy, you get the whole idea of the stress there, running Bramley Hedge Forest School and saying, no, 5 to 1, no chance. That's the government's idea. 5 toddlers, 1 member of staff. It could work, they say. Matthew Lesh is from the Institute of Economic Affairs, the think tank. He wrote a report arguing the ratios should change. Sharon Fairley is interesting because she runs 4 nurseries in Scotland where they already have this 5 to 1 ratio. And Sharon, you're the head of the Scottish Private Nursery Association. I'll come to you in a tick. Matthew Lesh, I know you're a free market person, but Sue was describing what happens when the free market really does go free, and it's not pretty.
Look, I mean, I think it's important to note what the government's talking about here is not particularly extreme. It's not going to be compulsory to have 5 people in class. It's a greater flexibility that if parents in nurseries decide that they would like to continue offering groups of 4 or even smaller, they're not prevented. But I think it's important we put this into a bit of a broader context here, which is the UK has some of the highest child to staff ratios in Western Europe. In the Netherlands and France, you're allowed groups of up to 8. In likes of Italy, Denmark and Sweden, they're not regulated at all. And there's good reason to believe that this extremely, actually quite modest proposal from the government to put England in line with Scotland would enable the likes of carers to be paid better. It could lower costs if it's taken up by nurseries. It's not some radical or ridiculous thing for the government to do. I don't think it's going to solve every issue either. I think there are a lot of other issues in regulation and in the childcare sector that need to be addressed.
Understood.
But I think it would be a step in the right direction.
Sharon Fairley, listening in Scotland, has it worked for you, the 5 to 1 ratio?
Oh, goodness me. We'd have a whole show, Jeremy. I'll try and keep this short. We are a broken sector. I think we're a broken sector across Scotland and England, and there's no real engagement or consultation, as Sue says, with government. I think the comparisons, funding, Scotland maybe government has pledged more funding, but the private sector and independent sector and childminders do not get that funding fully. The council take the first share of what they want, and then they then divvy out the rest of the funding to us. So we're underfunded. We may be a 1 to 5 ratio. That's maybe formally what we are, but we will actually man up with additional staff, especially within that age group. How can you have, even within Scotland, a 1 to 5 taking a 2-year-old, toilet training, nappy changing, supporting their behaviour, their needs, which we actually, we have had these. We supported this before COVID. Yeah. Very sadly, since after COVID, now we've got children that are really struggling.
Let me ask Matthew Lesh. I don't know if you've ever tried to toilet train 5 toddlers on, simultaneously, Matthew. I mean, can you offer Sharon any advice as you're suggesting this?
I would not be anywhere near precocious enough to offer Sharon any advice at all. I mean, I was looking into kind of some of the assessments of Scotland's childcare system. I mean, it is what England's talking about replicating here. And the care inspector in their most recent analysis found no evidence that the existing system was failing to meet children's need, and found that over 90% of childminders minders and 88% of daycare settings were good, very good, or excellent. So although Scotland, from all reports, does have issues with childcare, it doesn't seem like it's significantly different or worse than England as a result of the fact that there are these slightly different ratios. And as Sharon said, in all cases, you might not want to take this flexibility. If there's certain things that need to be done that require a smaller ratio at certain times, again, the government's not saying you have to take care of 5 at a time. They're saying you can in certain circumstances, and providing that flexibility to the childcare centres rather than being as prescriptive.
I think there has to be more up-to-date evidence that Martin maybe has to familiarise himself on. I think these external independent consultations that are taken don't reach us in the industry. And I think a lot of the statistics that are out there are from 2018. I think if you were actually to read present reports, I think you would see we need some fundamental strategic plans that we need to work together on, because the early years, I think the focus is very much on 3-year-olds. And I think if you were having this discussion with schools or even council nurseries, I think we'd have a walkout. I think there'd be a strike. Okay. And I think we need to have real serious engagement.
Thank you very much to Sharon Fairley, who runs 4 nurseries in Scotland, and Matthew Lesh from the Institute of Economic Affairs. Matthew thinks you can do this. Go 5-1 in nurseries. Sue Quincy, the brilliant Sue in Northallerton, says no way. In capital letters with a big full stop. Such a brilliant song, Coldplay. In My Place, BBC Radio 2, good afternoon. So interesting, this item as well, isn't it, about nursery ratios, because it's just basically taken the lid off this whole sector, and how upset people feel about the way they're treated. They just don't have the money to do the job they want to do, and the parents are expecting this to be a facility that's provided, and it just isn't. And the nurseries themselves are feeling squeezed dry, and then the government says, oh, maybe we'll go 5-1 children to staff member instead of 4-1. Bob's in Oxfordshire and says, my wife works in childcare in a 2-storey building. Her concern is she's got 5 babies, right? If she does, how does she get them out if there's a fire? They keep saying there's no money, but the owners swan around in new cars and big houses. This industry is a joke. Sally texts and says, I used to work in childcare. I was regularly left with 18 children. They never stuck to ratios unless Ofsted were there. Childcare workers earn a pittance for so much responsibility. They're often left in dangerous situations. Daniel's in Inskip. Daniel emails, my wife has worked as an early years practitioner for over 20 years. The 3 nurseries she's worked for have all struggled with ratios due to lack of staff in the industry. Expect them to take on more children per member of staff is dangerous, and a lot of people using the word dangerous in their comments. Nina's in Godalming. Hi, Nina.
Hi.
So you're a parent?
I am, yeah. I'm a parent. I've got 2 boys. One is 4 and the other is 10 months. So my 4-year-old is currently in nursery, and my 10-month-old is due to go in January when I go back to work. So it's a very real issue and something that I'm really worried about if they're proposing to change these ratios.
Well, I was really struck by the person who said that they work in a nursery and they'll be left with 18 children, as if the ratios aren't really used anyway.
Yeah, I know that, childcare certainly around this area is so oversubscribed. So often the baby rooms, every room is very full. It's hard to get a nursery place in the first instance. But actually, like when you look at the little ones, so my 10-month-old, I'm giving him lunch at the moment, and it's very much like 1-to-1.
Yeah.
I need to not only do I need to feed him, but I need to watch him. And the thought of, one adult having to look after 5 babies of varying ages, particularly at something like a mealtime when they're left with food or, it just sort of doesn't bear thinking about.
No.
Taking your eye off the ball.
What's for lunch today?
We've got some peanut butter toast.
Ooh.
All sorts of bits and pieces, leftovers. That's what happens when you're the second child. We've got,
yeah, my brother would say that. Yeah,
we can throw together.
Oh, thanks, Nina. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Fiona texts and says primary schools with children aged 5+ sometimes have one teacher for a class of 30. How's that different? Let's see. Annette in Bradford upon Avon. What about that? How is it different from a primary school where you have 30 people in a class?
Oh, it's hugely different. So by the time they've got to primary school, potentially a lot of them have been through the wonderful, wonderful care of some nursery staff who've taught them all the skills they need. I work in nurseries, and I can't tell you the difference it makes over the different years through toddlers and through preschool. Just the skills of things like lining up, things like I'm talking and then you're talking and we're sort of taking turns listening. So all those civilization skills, they're all built up through nursery. So by the time they get to school, they're steps ahead. So you're sort of seeing the end product after years of work from wonderful nursery staff.
I do see that. I'm guessing then you think that this ratio shouldn't change in nurseries.
Absolutely. I think it's a big mistake.
Okay, thank you. Julia's in Cambridgeshire. Hi, Julia.
Hello.
You have a bigger question.
Well, I suppose so, yes. So I'm not very eloquent. If the nursery should be able to have as few or as many as they choose to have, but the government shouldn't be paying, the parents should be paying. The parents should pay, if they choose to have children, they pay for the childcare. If you can't afford to have kids, don't have kids. I'm sorry, that's my point.
I'm trying to think about what the answer to that is, because I guess that's logical, but you might say that there will be in our society many people who have kids in different circumstances, or their circumstances change, or they haven't necessarily thought that through.
Well, then they should be thinking it through, shouldn't they?
Okay, but what if they don't? And what you can't punish the kids for the mistake a parent made. So you'd have to lay on nursery care.
Then they should pay for it.
Okay. So you think that basically
parents should stay at home. If they can't afford childcare, then they stay at home to look after the children. One parent goes out to work. It used to happen 50, 60 years ago. I know that's 50, 60 years ago.
No, of course, that's probably your mum and my mum. Yes, exactly. There wasn't.
Yeah, my mum stayed at home. When I was old enough to go to school, she went out to work. But before that, she stayed at home and looked after me and my brother.
But my dear mum never really had the option of having a career for that reason, that there was just an expectation she would do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, okay, women today are much freer than they were 50 or 60 years ago. They've got much more self-expectation. I don't know if that's a word or not. But if a woman wants to have a career, let a woman have a career. But you can't have a career and a family. It's not fair.
Thank you, Julia.
It's not fair on the children.
Thank you so much for talking to us. And appropriately, we play Texas Say What You